Hi, this is Sonim Bharti and welcome to another episode of TFR Newsroom. And today we have with us Mark Finkel. You are co-founder at Triggermesh. Can you tell us a bit about what does the company do? Why you created the company? What problem you saw in the market that you wanted to solve?
Triggermesh is a cloud native integration company. We have a platform that allows you to tie together serverless and cloud native infrastructure so that they can interact across silos from data center to any cloud and cross cloud as well.
If I ask you, people have been talking about serverless for a while. A lot of people still don't understand it. So how would you define serverless in the simplest form and way, and and if you can give some example how it affects our day-to-day life?
Serverless is the cloud infrastructure that allows you to execute a single purpose function, and it's also referred to as function as a service. And you are able to deploy your function and have it scale from 0 up to what it needs to be and back down. And that's probably the simplest way for someone to deploy an application in the cloud today. And that's why it's gotten the attention it has. In our everyday life, lots and lots of companies have adopted serverless, from companies like iRobot and Netflix and Uber and Twitter and people like that. And serverless or microservices, which is the same to end result, even though the infrastructure is a little bit different. There's usually a single purpose service that does something. For example, in your ride sharing app, a serverless function may look up your location and find the closest drivers to pick you up. And then there may be another serverless function that verifies that you have valid billing credentials in there. And those functions run individually. And when one ends, it'll there's an event that said, I looked up Swapnil's location. And that event would trigger, is Swapnil have a valid payment on his account? And then the third thing might be that, yes, he does. And it alerts the ride share car to come and pick him up. Those things all are individual functions, but what ties them together is the ability to know that one function ends and the next function can start.
What role has serverless played in the computing world, especially the enterprise computing world, where you gave all the examples, which may or may not have been possible without serverless? So I'm just curious, how it has changed the landscape.
I think that it is changed it from the way that we design applications that may have been monolithic. Now they're broken apart into these microservices that are often served via serverless infrastructure like Amazon Lambda or Microsoft Azure Functions. The reason it's changed is, for one thing, it does make your computing, your functions easier to scale up and down. So the way that serverless is metered is via the amount of execution time and the amount of data transfer. So if you had a function that before was running on a container or a virtual machine, and it was a dedicated container for 60 minutes, you're paying for 60 minutes of compute time. But what may be the case is that of that 60 minutes, you only are using that 10, and that's where serverless is novel. And not only the fact that it's only charging you for the time it's running, it can also scale up for the time that you need it. So for example, if you're a retailer, you send out your newsletter, and your individual serverless functions are scaling up to handle that initial volume as people open your sale flyer in their email. But then it can scale down to 0 or scale down significantly later on when people are not as active. And that's the novelty of it.
There are still a lot of companies who are still, on their path to digital transformation. They're still, kind of embracing, playing with cloud-native technologies. They have their whole, baggage of monolithic applications. How do you help them to leverage these serverless technologies without having to refactor everything, so that they can bring their own, whether it's SAP or whatever stack they're using, they can very easily bring it into the fold and leverage it, because I think that's what Triggermesh mostly do, the integration of all those SaaS offerings.
A lot of those applications aren't cloud native. Actually, the majority of the applications, they aren't deployed as cloud native applications, but they may have APIs and ways for them to interact over the network. You can modernize your existing applications by adding functions and interacting through the APIs for things like SAP or Oracle or others. And that's one of the things that I think is what's going to become more and more popular over the upcoming year, is that I have an application and I want to do some ETL, some extract, transform and load functions for data, and take it from a database to a web database, or replicate that data. Those kind of things and worker functions can be deployed in the cloud and interact with your legacy applications, and it gives them a modern interface to the cloud native world.
Can you tell us what kind of either services, I mean, not product, but services that Triggermesh offers? I just want to, kind of a little catalog there, if you can.
We provide a platform that allows you to fully manage the life cycle of your serverless function. So you provide your credentials to, for example, GitLab. We can log into GitLab, see what repositories you have, and then push them out to the cloud of your choice, or to a Knative enabled Kubernetes cluster. We also can create, and this is where the name Trigger and the Triggermesh comes from, is, well, we can create triggers to kick those functions off. So, for example, we can listen to IBM MQ or VMware vSphere or Azure Function Hub, and take those events to trigger a function. Because those functions are not continuously running, you need a trigger to kick them off. And then the mesh part comes from the fact that we can mesh the clouds and the data center together.
Serverless is not, I mean, it's not new, but still people are, kind of still playing with it. What are some of the, roadblocks, challenges that organizations face when they look at embracing serverless? What are some of the biggest problems that you think it still needs to be solved?
I think it's the design pattern for a lot of them. A lot of those folks who have designed applications in the past, they're monolithic, and they are, we're definitely not cloud native, developed for cloud uses. And some of the things in serverless that are hard for folks to grasp are the fact that it's a decoupled application of services rather than a single application. And the analogy might be that the libraries in a monolithic application would be equivalent to the functions and services, microservices that you're using in a distributed cloud native application. Specifically in the serverless arena, one thing that people are coming to grips with is that they are stateless applications versus stateful. And so that idea of state is a hard thing to let go of when you're used to some of the other programming paradigms.
And you also, got a new round of seed funding of, I think, $3 million led by Index Ventures and Crane Ventures. I'm curious about the kind of future or the plans that you have for Triggermesh in 2020. What are the areas where you want to invest, or what are the areas you want to grow? What will be your focus in 2020? Can you talk about that?
We closed at the end of 2019, $3 million in funding from Index and Crane. And Index has got a pretty impressive history with infrastructure companies. They currently, or they were an investor in cloud.com, which I was an executive at cloud.com. They've done Elastic, which recently went public, Confluent, the Kafka company, Kong HQ, the API company. So that's very exciting that we have the benefit of their experience and not just the investment on itself. But where we're going is we're building out a company that is international. We until this year we had no employees, all contractors, and then my co-founder Sebastian Guzguan and myself, and our chief canine officer Woodford the dog, and now we're bringing in developers, making them part of the company. We're adding some administrative folks, sales and marketing, so that we can start to finish the product the way we would like to, as an integration platform, and really take it to market. So that's what our funding brings us. It's accelerates our growth.